Constitutional Conversations is a series of discussions by America's leading scholars about the principles framing, ratification, and implementation of constitutional government in the United States. This series is hosted by the James Madison Memorial Fellowship Foundation, an agency of the federal government established by Congress to improve teaching about the United States Constitution.
Well, since you were so gracious with my other dangerous question, I'll ask you one final one.
Sure.
By way of summation, if you wouldn't mind. And so founding partisans. Partisan has a little connotation, it has a little pejorative connotation to us, I think. Partisanship, it's kind of a bad word to us. In your view, and you've written books about the 20th century, Theodore Roosevelt, you've got a very commanding grasp of the sweep of American history. Now, having written this book, in your view, was this early partisanship, was it on balance healthful for America? Was it a good way for us to sort of begin our national life or not?
I'm going to say that it was inevitable. And having said that it's inevitable, it seems to me almost beside the point to argue whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. The way I would put it is this. There were positive aspects to it, in that it allowed, especially as the country grew, it allowed people to figure out who they were voting for. So when we got to a point where people didn't know individually who was running for president, and by the way, and this has to do with the fact that the Electoral College didn't operate the way the framers thought it was going to operate. So if you're running for office, and I don't know anything about you except that you identify as a Republican or a Democrat, that tells me something I didn't know. And that's important if Virginia has grown to be a state of many millions of people, and it's not that I'm voting for the person that I know and my kids went to school with that person. So there's that. There has to be something to make it possible to run a large republic. And again, this is something that the framers had no conception of, how big this country would become. I think it's an open question whether the Constitution they wrote for a country of several million can really work for a country of 300 million plus. And it needed something else to make it work. And that something that emerged in America is political parties. I posit that something like parties had to emerge. Now, could we have had something that were like parties, but without the parties' drawbacks? That's a tough one too, because if you have free politics will be competitive politics. And in competitions, people, they play hard. And they find their allies where they can find them, and they oppose the opposition. So I don't see how things could have been otherwise. And having said that, I will say then it behooves us to make the best of this inevitability. And in that regard, I think that I'm speaking in the spirit of the later James Madison.
All right, fair enough. Well, that's a good place to end, I think. Well, H.W. Brands, thank you. It's been a privilege for us to host you here, talking about your latest book again, Founding Partisans, Hamilton, Madison, Jefferson, and Adams, and the brawling birth of American politics. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Constitutional Conversations is made possible by a generous grant from the Fairleigh S. Dickinson Jr. Foundation. Constitutional Conversations is made possible by the James Madison Education Fund.